thank you everybody for coming. In case you don't know, I'm Gary Dixon, Town Supervisor. Been in for a little over 4 years and joined by one of our councilmen, Jeff McCarrick, also for a bit over 4 years. Certainly Lexington Green has been a waterkeeper. We have this project, and I'm going to turn it over now to Catherine Winkler, and she's going to tell you what you came to hear.
Unfortunately, you have to hold it constant, so your thumb will get a good exercise.
Are we ready?
Catherine, could you make an announcement that this will be available? Thank you.
How did you guys start with that?
No, that's okay.
All right, well, thank you everyone for coming. This meeting is being live streamed on Facebook. We will be saving the presentation and it will be available online as well. We do have some comment cards in the back that we would really appreciate you guys filling out, or you can email me at any point. I am Catherine Winkler with Niagara Waterkeeper. Waterkeeper, for those of you who don't know, we've been around for about 35 years, a little bit over at this point, and we are your guardians of water in our area. So we do tons of different projects. We have a staff of about 25 different people, ranging from so we do projects from shoreline restoration projects. The picture on the bottom left is from a new project at Ellicott Creek. We do a lot of education and outreach. One of the biggest ones that I've been working on is public access creation. So the Buffalo River Blueway, the Buffalo Blueway, we've been installing public access sites so that people can enjoy the waterways. There will be a new public access site in the Town of West Seneca next year at the Harlan Road Fishing Access Site, right behind Tops over there. So that will be really exciting. We also do water quality monitoring. Next slide, please. So this project, our ultimate goal is to alleviate flooding in the Lexington Green neighborhood. As we all know, we are all here. We are all citizens of Western New York, and we constantly see how this area is being bombarded in the spring with water because of ice flow. One of the nature-based solutions that you could take in comparison to building dikes or levees is building a floodplain. So this area was, next slide please, was identified as part of a Resilient New York study back in 2018. In 2022, Waterkeeper received funding from the National Coastal Resiliency Fund to do the preliminary design and feasibility. We really wanted to take a look and see if creating some type of floodplain, an area where, and Lexi and Michelle will get more into the details of what a floodplain is, but we really wanted to see is it possible to contain some of that water before it flows into the Lexington Green neighborhood, right? So you want to capture it, let it slowly release back. So in 2022, we did that. The results came back very positive. Waterkeeper then applied for additional funding. My finger is getting hurt. I've switched. Oh, that didn't take long. We received additional funding in 2024, which is the phase we're in now, to do the final designs and permits. So we'll show you a little bit later what parcels we're looking at, but we've been in contact with the landowners, and everyone seems to be on board at this point. And this is gonna go quick, right? So this project needs to be done by the end of 2024, that's our goal. We're gonna get permits, which might take 2 to 4 months, and then project implementation will be in 2025, 2026. All of this is being funded by the National Coastal Resiliency Fund, which is a nationwide foundation, so there's no cost to taxpayers at all with this project. Next slide, I think it goes on to you. So Waterkeeper contracted with Ramble to do all the phases of this project. You're up next, right? And we have the Ramble team with us today, the very smart people who will go into depth on the project. At the end, we will have questions and answers. Feel free to either use the comment cards, or if you want to just talk, that'd be great too. You good?
So my name is Michelle McIntyre. I'm from Ramble. I'm the project manager. I also have Lexi Hackford with me, who's the lead engineer on the project. So kind of went through the welcome, the introductions. We'll go into the project background a little bit, into our goals and objectives, which Catherine kind of touched on, into the findings that we found in the preliminary design phase that was done before, the step that we're in right now, and then what some of the restoration techniques and what the floodplain might look like, and the potential benefits of it, and then a Q&A and questions afterwards. So as you've heard, Buffalo Niagara Waterkeeper and the Town of West Seneca are the two sponsors of the project. They contracted with Ramble, who's the lead engineer. We also have a couple of other subcontractors that are helping us out. So Atlantic Testing Laboratories will be doing the geotechnical testing. Patriot Design Consulting will be doing the survey. And then Morin Archaeological Research will be doing the phase 1 archaeological study of the site. We've also, throughout the whole project, been partnering with the local regulatory agencies. We actually met with them this week to have a pre-application meeting to get them up to speed with where we're at, confirm what permits need to be applied for, the timing, and start getting their initial, reactions and comments. So New York State DEC, Army Corps of Engineers, SHPO, and then the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services. So just a little bit about the background. As I'm sure all of you guys know, this area has had quite a bit of historical flooding, especially in the springtime where you got the ice breaking up and it flows downstream and it jams. Buffalo Creek, because of all the historical flooding, was selected back in 2018 as part of the Resilient New York project that the governor funded and instituted to try to find practical solutions to flooding throughout New York State. Right after the project kicked off, you guys had a very significant flood in 2019 where several neighborhoods in the area were evacuated. So great timing for the project. We were able to get some real life observations and data. The Resilient New York project was then finalized, and that's what Catherine and Buffalo Niagara Waterkeepers went after additional funding. And then again, another severe flooding event in 2022. So definitely, as we've been going through this process, we've seen the results of the flooding in the area and how important it is to the community. So the picture might look familiar. That's one of the historical flooding events along Buffalo Creek. And as you can see, the creek kind of likes to go into the floodplain, the natural low-lying area that's right adjacent to it. And over the years, the community has built on that natural floodplain. And so when the stream wants to naturally, use that floodplain, there's a lot of damage to the community, a lot of emotional impact, a lot of property damage. So we kind of like to use this diagram because I think it really is very easy to understand. So the top one is, Buffalo Creek right now. So we're not changing the volume or the flow rate going through the creek. That we can't change or, divert somewhere. So that is, a constant. Right now, Buffalo Creek has like a very defined, width of it. So when it gets a lot of flood going through it, all it can do is the elevation can rise. What we're planning to do is with the flood bench, you kind of, increase the width of that flow, of that creek. And that allows it so when you do have that huge volume coming down the stream, instead of it having nowhere to go and it just keeps rising in its height, it's able to spread out and it's less depth. So less impact on the community, less flooding in your yards and in your houses and your property. All right, so goals of the project. So really to restore the natural floodplain right next to the creek. Try to reduce the long-term flooding that you guys have been seeing, make a positive impact on the community. Reduce the physical and the property damage that you guys have been seeing year after year. And then really reducing the cost of recovering from all those floods and that property damage. And we'll go ahead and skip over that one. All right, so 2 years ago, we did the preliminary design phase. And originally we started looking at several different parcels along Buffalo Creek. Oh, perfect. So as you can see, we started out the project with 7 different parcels that could be used to put in flood benches, both on both sides of the creek. We did a lot of modeling using our HECRAS model to really simulate a 10-year storm, a 20-year storm, 50-year, 100-year, and where the flooding, the reaches of the flooding would be. And then if we put in those flood benches, 1 of them, 2 of them, all of them, what is the impact? How are we alleviating or decreasing the flooding? And what we came up with is, looking at logistics, looking at property owners, looking at just the overall area that we could take up. We narrowed in on 3 parcels. And really by putting a flood bench on those 3 parcels, it had the most benefit when we were doing the hydraulic modeling. So hopefully, I know these 2 might have a little bit of trouble seeing, but wanted to at least put them up because I think, a picture says 1,000 words. So this is what comes out of, the modeling. And so everywhere where there's the purpley blue and the pink is where the water would go out of Buffalo Creek onto neighboring properties during a 100-year storm, current conditions. And you can kind of see the extent of the flooding. By putting in the flood benches that we're proposing, the areas that are just pink are no longer flooded. So all those areas that are pink that are on both sides of Buffalo Creek, near Lexington Green and on the other side, they no longer get flooded. The areas that still are like the bluish purple, they might still get flooded, but instead of maybe 4 feet of water on those properties where it's coming over the threshold of your house, it's flooding your basement, the property damage, the elevation of those floodwaters is decreased by several feet. So it becomes more of a nuisance, less of, destruction on your property, and provides some benefit. We also did the same thing with ice jamming, and that's really, what we're seeing, the most impact in this area of Buffalo Creek. So again, the bluish purple and the pink is everywhere that gets flooded under a 100-year storm, existing conditions. So you see, with the ice jam, it's a lot bigger area that's getting all that flood water that's being impacted by the creek going out of its, natural area into the floodplain. Again, the areas that are pink are no longer getting flooded with the floodplain. Those floodplains are, taking the waters back and alleviating those floods. And then the purple areas, again, they're decreasing in the depth of the flood. So based on the model under a 10-year storm, so one you see, probably typically every 10 years with, climate change and, the increase in storm events, you probably see them more often. You're going to get a 1.5-foot reduction in the flooding due to the floodplain. In a 50-year storm, it's 2 feet, and then what we usually design around is a 100-year storm. And the depth of the flooding in the area decreases by 2.5 or 2.2 feet. Also, kind of wanted to show what a floodplain looks like from a profile. So if you look at the top, that's kind of, pictorially what, a creek might look like. Not such a deep, embankment for Buffalo Creek, but definitely you see as it rises again, it has nowhere to stretch out on either side, and so it just has can only go up. And that's why you see the flood depth is, quite a bit higher. When we actually take that elevation down and put a floodplain right next to it, as the water starts increasing the flow rate, it has some place to spread out without, going up. And you can see how it has less impact than on the houses that are at a higher elevation. So I want to go over some of the benefits of a floodplain over maybe some of the other alternatives that we took a look at. One of the hugest benefits of a floodplain is it's an environmentally safe, it's an environmentally advantageous alternative. It's something that restores what was there naturally. It takes very little maintenance from the town's part, from the local community. You can still have access to it. Doesn't change the aesthetics of the area. You still have the vegetation. You can still have the walking trails. Anything that was there, there's not any permanent, structure. We're just decreasing the elevation and replanting. Some of the other things is it really does help with erosion. So, as that water is going through, you don't get it going at such a high speed that's picking up, the solids, the rocks along the embankment. It slows it down, lets it go into the floodplain, and you get less erosion. So it controls the sediment. It helps with water quality. The vegetation, the floodplain helps clean out that soil sediment, allows it to settle, and so keeps the water quality of the creek. And then just protection of public infrastructure that's in the area. So one of the things we really want to get out of this meeting, and we have some posters in the back, is to start talking as we go into final design what that floodplain is going to look like, what the community wants it to look like. Any comments, feedback. There's usually in a floodplain 3 different areas that we do different types of plantings. So we have an upland forest area that has larger, bigger, more mature trees. We have a middle area that's kind of like more of we call it forest planting. And then we have near the water more shrubs and scrub, and there's lots of different varieties. If there's feedback that people want, we can definitely take it at this time. And then as Catherine kind of already went over, is the project timeline. So right now we're going into the fieldwork stage where we'll start to do the survey. It is on a culturally sensitive area, so we do have to do an archaeological phase 1 study, so that's going to start in the next month. We're going to do geotechnical boring, so we know what the soil is like, and we use the right plantings that will anchor themselves and survive. And then we'll go through 60 and 90% design. Plan to have a bid package ready for regulatory review at the end of this year, and then if everything goes according to plan with permitting, start construction next year.
I have a question.
Yeah, of course.
Is the creek going to be dredged for this project?
Yeah, good question. So we are not going into the creek at all. So we're going to stay above what we call the high water level. There is sensitive mussel species in the creek, so as long as we stay out of the creek, we don't impact them, and it doesn't require additional permitting. So yeah, we're going to stay completely out of the water. So yeah, open it up to any questions.
Who owns the property that this floodplain is going to be built on?
Yeah, it's
So we have had preliminary discussions with both landowners at this point. We are looking to put conservation easements on the land. So they would be permanently protected. So they would not be able to have any development on them in the future. Right now, pretty much all of the area that we're looking at is already undevelopable because it's in a floodplain. This would put an extra layer of protection on top of that.
So custom field is in the
Mhm.
So the field, the Canisius field is in what was designated a floodplain?
Gary, do you know if Was Kessler Field in the floodplain?
Canisius Field?
Mhm.
Why was it
It was not.
allowed to be
Yeah,
built?
certainly now.
Why was that allowed to be built?
I'm sorry, I don't know the answer as to why Kessler Field was permitted.
So when they built the new ones that they just built, but a couple years ago, the engineer said that because of the way they made it and the retention that they had, it actually stored more water with them there than what had been there.
So they consider it an improvement?
From a water standpoint, yes.
I mean, from a floodplain?
Yes.
or Flood.
I'm not saying how much, I mean, but it was a net positive. But this project is far bigger than that.
Different.
Can you tell us the roads that their floodplains are gonna be on? Like, is it Clinton?
Yeah, so there is a map, and Alexi, can you go back to that? So it's just upstream of the Oxbow off of Clinton Street.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's another map behind you in the back as well, that you
Okay,
can take a look
thank
at. It's two different parcels, for reference, near the Urson greenhouse and driving range, that area.
Okay.
Go ahead.
In regards to that, oxbow, is there any consideration to utilizing that as well? Because right now, the oxbow is only drained by a 2-foot long, about a 2-foot diameter pipe. Is there any consideration to opening that up or whatever so that in flooding conditions, the water can back up into there more rapidly and stay away from the residential area?
So we did not take a look at the Oxbow as part of this project because we wanted contiguous parcels. So you get the bigger bang for your buck when the parcels are next to each other. The Kessler Field would have broken that up, so we did not look at it. Evelyn next to you, who always loves to speak on these things, has worked extensively on the Oxbow, and I'm not sure that the town would necessarily be on board with doing additional alterations there at this point anyway.
It's not our, responsibility. The town does not have jurisdiction there. It's the, Erie, Wyoming, Joint Water Board that has the jurisdiction over how that drains into the Buffalo Creek.
It was looked at as part of the Resilient New York original project, doing something with the Oxbow, so it has been studied in a very, high level on what could be done there and what the benefit would be to the flooding.
How is Oxbow impacted positively?
What's use of the money?
Yeah. Yeah, so
I mean,
how is,
It is a biodiverse sense of area.
yep, no, absolutely. So we did with our modeling, we looked both upstream and downstream of where we're putting the flood bench, just to make sure that we weren't basically moving the problem and making things worse downstream. And downstream, it either shows some benefit or it stays kind of as existing conditions. So no adverse effect, potentially some, minimum positive impact.
I can actually speak to this, to that. Do you want me to use the mic or
Yes,
can you
please.
hear me?
Yeah, go on, what's your
Yeah, come on,
Okay.
come join us,
Yeah, her.
Just
introduce yourself.
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, everybody, Evelyn Hicks, former chairperson of the West Seneca Environmental Commission and current member of the Environmental Commission. And back in 2004, when, it was 2004, when projects were being proposed along Clinton Street, we had a group of people, many of whom are here tonight. We did extensive study with the National Resource Conservation Service, US, I think, are they under USDA? USGS, okay. Anyway, they're out of East Aurora. But the upshot is that the Oxbow actually collects water from 442 acres that's north and east of the Oxbow. In a severe flood, which we had I'm trying to think, maybe it was the ice jam flood, maybe 7 or 8 years ago. I walked back there the day after the flood, and the ice had risen and formed its own channel into the oxbow. So it naturally will hold more water from the creek. But generally speaking, the oxbow does not hold creek water. It holds water from up by where Rosina used to be, over on French Road, all the way down Clinton Street, crosses Clinton Street, or right at the, if you want to call it, it's a culvert, where the Kessler Field is, and then goes back into the oxbow. So the oxbow really isn't a factor for this conversation, and it is a protected New York State wetland, so it would be difficult for us to do some engineering in there anyway. Does that answer your question?
Where is the oxbow in that map?
Can you go to the purple map?
It's north.
Just
It's north.
downstream.
The purple map, keep going, there.
Right in the top,
It's,
on the far left.
This is Kessler Field.
Right, the oxbow is right there. And it's roughly right across the street from, the Point Bar. The Point, whatever the bar is there at the.
Yeah,
Vinny's. Right across the street. And back, of course, in the creek.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely.
How many acres roughly does the floodplain should take up?
Oh, you had to ask a question that I don't have memorized.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like 20 plus. But I don't remember the exact number off the top of my head.
That's fine, it's get a ballpark.
Are they purchasing all those acres from the owners, or how's that going?
Yeah, so we're not purchasing the land, we're looking at the conservation easements, which the town would hold. And back to the question about how large it is, 20-something plus acres. We're in the final design phase, right? So what you're seeing, well, on the other one of the yellow bars, those are gonna be tweaked based on the modeling and all of the data we're collecting. So it's not gonna be a solid line across. So we don't have an exact number at this point, but roughly in that area. It's really what we're trying to do is get the amount of land needed to reduce the flooding to that 2.2, right? That's what we're trying to do.
I have another question then. Potentially speaking, in New York State, the law just changed and the requirement for an actual New York State floodplain, I think, is smaller now than 12.5 acres. Is that correct? Or is it still like 12.5 acres? Do you know?
I don't know.
Okay, neither here nor there. Over the course of time, would this qualify for that protection?
Would it turn into a wetland is really what you're
Right.
asking.
I mean, it's not our goal, but as a circumstance, would that be a conclusion we could look for?
Yeah, it could naturally kind of, over the years turn into, more like a wetland type of environment, yes. Yeah, and as part of the next stage, we'll do more complicated ice jam modeling to actually show how the ice kind of like forms benches. It kind of like sheets off and then kind of sits on the side of the embankment, making sure that when we design it too, that we're putting plants or natural like hardening of the landscape that will actually survive that, and it's not that a couple of years down the road all the hard work goes away.
How long is this project expected to last? What is the lifespan of something like this?
So from, I guess, finish of construction to like when it's fully.
No, to forever, like when does it have to be redone? 50 years, 30 years?
Never.
Probably
Yeah.
never?
Yeah, never.
Okay.
The goal.
That would be the goal, yes.
Does it accumulate silt?
You gotta think about, it's only how many floods that you're having.
Right, so not that many.
1, 2, 3, 4, over.
And there's a
10 years.
natural washing
You know what I'm
process
saying?
that
What
happens
are you
each
talking
time that
about?
happens.
Yeah.
Layering, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so it will probably,
Right,
as
right,
it's
right.
flooding, it'll bring some sediment and, logs and debris, it'll naturally settle on the side of the floodplain. But natural process will take over, it'll degrade, it'll kind of, become part of the just natural environment. So the idea is that you don't have to go and dredge it or, I guess, go in and maintain it and remove all that debris.
You have to remove the logs every year, it'll break down.
Yeah.
Salamanders will love it.
It'll eat itself.
The whole length of this project, you're gonna stop right at the Canisius property, it looks like to me? You're not gonna go any farther with that?
Yeah. For the moment, yes.
But I mean, you can go farther if you have to, or if you want to.
They wouldn't be able to use any of that little space behind the stadium there.
Yeah, so,
You know that.
From a modeling perspective, we tried to find what parcels gave us the biggest bang for our buck. So, some of the other parcels down the way, they're smaller, segments, and so as you start to put them together, you're putting a lot of cost in for a very smaller, addition to the reduction in the flood. So this really kind of had that sweet spot where, it's more cost effective for the amount of reduction that we're getting in the water level. But it's not saying this is the only solution, years down the road, you guys could, definitely look at other alternatives. The Resilient New York project, I know, looked at several up and down the whole creek. So this was just one component of that report. So as you guys get more funding or look at other alternatives, you could definitely do more projects closer to the oxbow and farther downstream.
Or even upstream,
Or
right?
even upstream, exactly, exactly.
So I was wondering, you were mentioning that your modeling is based on a 100-year flood, and you're looking at an average flood height reduction of about 2.2 feet, right? Did you ever compare that to historical flood data, like a whopper we had about 10 years ago, to take a look at and say, hey, what type of effect would this project have had based on our modeling on the Lexington Green neighborhood? We've been living there since '68, and that's the most water we've ever got in our house. Third time the basement's filled up all the way. This time the family room got wiped out, So I was kind of wondering, how much of an effect would this have had on there? Quite frankly, given the situation and, the lack of any real solutions all these years and my frustrations, I'm thinking about selling and getting the heck out of there,
We did look. I don't have on hand what the model was telling us under that 100-year flood, what the water elevation is in the Lexington Green area. I want to say it was 5 feet is what my gut is telling me, so we're reducing it by like half.
And the berm is there now.
So is all this stuff being done going to help me with the value of my house? The value of my house, quite frankly, is in the toilet with all this flooding. If it was not in a flood-prone neighborhood, my house would be worth 3 times as much as it was now. Do you think this is gonna help my real estate value?
I can't answer that. I mean, the berm is higher, or the berm has been refurbished. The berm wasn't there in 2014.
Correct, right.
So the berm's there, and then if you lower the height of the water, obviously, depends on the storm, any storm, big enough storm is gonna overcome anything, but, we're making it much more likely that there's not gonna be any flooding into Lexington Green, or what flooding there is easily handled with pumps and stuff, and is only in the streets.
Is this berm more permanent now than the temporary nature of the sandbags, which are falling apart?
Oh, yeah, go in the back. Go in the back.
I mean, it's
Go in the backyard.
Well, I mean, if it's dirt on top of sandbags,
No.
who knows how long that's gonna be there? I haven't seen it, that's why I'm asking.
Well,
I think that there is data on
What
town
is
website.
reinforcing on top of the sandbags now to keep this all from washing away? What's on there?
Vegetation.
It
Vegetation?
ain't gonna get washed.
It's not?
No, they put off the roof.
The creek is pretty nasty with the ice, it really scours stuff hard. So if it's just dirt on top of sandbags, I'm not confident.
Those sandbags stopped a lot of water.
Addition to the
I've
berm
gotten many
would
many
reduce it
pictures
further,
of
so I think that's what he's getting at.
We did put the berm in the,
Overall, it's more than just like 2 feet.
yeah, we did put the berm in the model, so.
So that's
this
with
is-
the berm.
That's with the berm.
Okay.
So the berm is part of the existing conditions, so we put in the existing conditions model, so we saw what the flooding would be for a 100-year storm with your permanent berm there, and then how much we would actually reduce the flooding with the floodplain.
Excuse me.
Let's just, one quick question, let's say this wasn't enough to solve the problem.
Yeah.
Would you then, widen the bench or increase the berm or both, or how does that?
Yeah, so there's only so much land that, you know, that we can take or we can use for the floodplain. We did look at different, I guess, square footages, and it had like diminishing returns. So the more you made it in that specific area, didn't really reduce the flooding or the depth of line enough to make it really worth it.
So there are additional projects that would be looked at.
Yeah.
At that time, potentially upstream at the Birchfield Center, which I know Erie County Soil and Water tells me every single year, yes, we know that there's a lot of erosion there. Yes, we know that there's a lot of sediment going into the creek, and no, you're not on our list to remediate that at this point. And we don't know when you're gonna be on the list. Every single year when the funding comes out, I ask Mark Gaston about it, and that's what he tells me, the same thing every year. So I don't know when we're gonna be on the rotation for that, but we are on the map to do more than just, okay, so you have to look at all the different things we're doing. So the berm is one remedy, the flood bench is one remedy, some other possible improvement upstream will assist in that. So, you know, it's not just like one thing or another, it's gonna accumulate over time, and it's taken 20 years to get here. So, you know, and when the Army Corps and all the Brain Trust put in the sills, you know, that didn't really, it slowed the water down going on South Ogden Street, but it didn't really help us, right? So, I
Yeah,
mean,
so
these
unfortunately,
things-
there isn't like, what you're saying, there's not one silver bullet that's gonna fix everything, right? Like, we're doing this piecemeal.
Well, the
there
biggest
are
thing is nobody
responsi-
knows where the ice is ever gonna jam, that's the biggest thing.
Yeah, and we're,
So the creek can take all the water you put in it,
mhm.
it's the ice jam that screws you.
But
And
like
that's
Just the bridge and then.
School Street got whacked. Lexington Green didn't get hit as hard as School Street, but there's so few people on School Street that it
big thing,
didn't
right.
rise to the level of everybody screaming and yelling, but there are still homes that are not habitable on School Street because of the flood that we had when Birchfield got flooded, whenever that was, 3, maybe 5 years ago now, if you remember that flood. It flooded all the way up to Race Street.
Right, they evacuated the people out of schools.
Right. So I mean, hopefully these things that are being done are gonna help everybody.
Cumulative, just over the years.
What about downstream? Are they looking into downstream at all? Cause that seems like that's what causes the ice jam is farther down. We were told it was gonna be, the new bridge was gonna rectify everything, and we, you know, they put in the bridge, they got all this funding from, you know, I don't know who, but it was because of the flood. And
You're talking
it's-
Harlem Road.
yes, the
Yeah.
Helen Road Bridge.
That's where the two jams at the
Where
bridge.
the two creeks.
Where the two
If they
creeks
would've
meet.
lifted the
Yeah.
bridge
They said after
and humped it.
the 2014 flood, that was one of the big causes.
Yep.
And they just put all that money into it, and that was gonna be, you know, rectify everything.
But they are the state, right? So that wasn't a local project. I don't even think we had any jurisdiction.
No,
On
this
the
is
project
what
at all.
project does, because it was
They should have domed it.
stated for many years.
I can kinda agree with you on that.
But it seems like the jamming
No
is
pillars.
even after the
They
bridge.
domed it, and it would just
Well, it's
more
gonna,
water
I
could
mean,
flow under it.
with the flood bench, maybe there will be a place for the ice to go. Like right
Oh,
now,
I get it, yeah.
if you look at where Brian Doster lives, on that parcel between him and Johnny DiCarlo, the Canisius owns that parcel. that gets ice halfway or more up onto that field in a ice jam flood. That field takes a lot of ice. So maybe someday when we have a situation where we get, when everything's frozen, and then we get that fast thaw in January with a lot of rain, you'll see that ice up in that field.
Where the horse is?
No, this is upstream, by Brian Doster's house, by Mackey's, or whatever they call it now, up by Werner's.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Right, yeah, Frankie G's, is that what you said?
Yeah.
So
The
up
restaurant.
there, up toward Union Road,
Clinton
that
Union.
big lot takes a lot of ice.
Oh, okay.
That's like the plumber's lot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's,
Which
it's
is
Johnny
sort of
DeCarlo, right?
That
Isn't
right
it?
spot right over there
Used to
on
be
the right.
Viper's time.
Yeah, the idea is that the floodplain would take some of that ice so it doesn't keep going downstream and then jam up at the bridges. But unfortunately, every town is kind of responsible for what's in their jurisdiction. So we're doing what we can right here in the town of West Seneca.
Wonderful.
So ladies, thanks for the presentation.
Yeah.
I didn't hear it. Is the Black Bridge coming out?
At what bridge?
The railroad bridge.
Oh, the railroad bridge?
Is that part of your?
It is not part of our scope. So what we got funding for was, the funding source we got was just for the floodplain.
So I'm sure your modeling suggests the benefits of removing the Black Bridge.
We did look at that under the Resilient New York project, yes.
So we should talk to our local congressman or whatever and see if they get some funding to remove that bridge. That'd be-
It's definitely, it could be a piece of the solution here. So, yeah, under Resilient New York, I wanna say we looked at 20 to 30 different alternatives. If there was a silver bullet, we would have been jumping up and down and telling everyone. And it really, there wasn't one alternative that we looked at that resolved the flooding in all the critical areas, so.
But if you get funding from somewhere else, that's
Yes.
that's a benefit,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, so the funding source that we got, we can only use for a floodplain, but yes, if you could look at other alternatives.
Buffalo Niagara Waterkeeper does have a site
The
dedicated to
railroad
this
bridge.
project. All of these reports,
Creek, the railroad bridge.
from Resilient New York are on there. So if you wanna take a look at that report, it's specific to Buffalo Creek, not just within West Seneca, but all of Buffalo Creek, and it gives all of those options. Those are all basically playbooks, right, that anybody can go and take to your congressman and say this
I looked at that.
needs to be done. They're great reports, so. We're doing them one at a time.
Do you have a rough estimate of the ultimate cost of building the floodplain?
And they say that it does.
I do. Okay, I was gonna say, yeah, you said
I mean, I was on there.
So the actual implementation of the project is probably gonna be in the range of $5 to $6 million. So that will come from a funding source, not from the local taxpayers, so we're looking at that.
You know,
We're putting in a grant application Tuesday.
What's the timeline on the whole project?
So,
When's it gonna start, when's it gonna end?
yep, so back to this slide, so project implementation, we're looking at shovels in the ground in 2025. Right after the permits are in, we'll put this project out for competitive bid. Local contractors will come in 2025, probably May, June. We'll do as much work as we can until can't work anymore, so probably looking at November. It's gonna be a lot of grading, as you can see. We would then come back in the spring when everything's a little bit drier and nicer, put in all the plantings, and then there would be a year period of establishment where we would do surveys and monitoring, and we would be able to go back out there and do any replantings if trees died, if something failed. So by 2026, 2027, you should have a fully functioning walk away from the project type of project.
Nice.
Is there another project like this elsewhere on the Buffalo River downstream? Any other projects that were done?
Not on the Buffalo River, no. So the most similar project that Waterkeeper has done is one in, I think it's the Town of Niagara. It's on Cayuga Creek. There was a mobile home community that was severely flooded. We were able to reconnect Cayuga Creek to its floodplain and reduce that flooding there. So that would be our most comparable one that we've done in our area.
How long's that been in place?
think we completed that one about 2 or 3 years ago, so.
Seems to be, getting observed, like, some benefits already, or?
Yes, so during some larger storms, we've gone out there with drones and we've really been able to see how the creek has overflowed into that floodplain and, you know, lessen the impact. Just like this, no silver bullet. Some water is still getting into that area and there are some issues, but it has alleviated it significantly.
You don't see any, problems with the permit process? You know that? DEC's all on board or whoever, right? Nicole?
Yeah, so we have, talked to them, before the project started and then had the pre-application meeting last week. Nothing that,
Yesterday. It was yesterday, was it? I think it was yesterday.
Wednesday. Yeah, the days are all rolling together. But no, they haven't indicated anything. So Army Corps, as long as we stay out of the water, a permit's not necessary. We do have to do wetland delineation, so as long as there's no wetlands too, then Army Corps doesn't require a permit. DEC, again, the wetlands, and then as long as we're staying above the high water surface level, that definitely decreases the amount of permitting.
Does the Corps of Engineer independently from this whole project have any chance of dredging the creek at all, or did they plan on doing anything?
You know, I did not bring that up with them when we had them on the phone. So we stuck mostly to the permitting for this project, so.
I know there's 2 areas of concern that I think everybody here would probably say the same thing. One is the Black Bridge. When I moved into Gardenville in 1970, the strawberry fields, that's where they got all their gravel for their roads. They used to take earth movers in there. It was always full of water. It was never shallow. The bridge to the left, if you were going down Indian Church Road, was always 10 or 12 feet deep. Now it's maybe 6 feet deep. So that got filled in with silt. If you go down the road behind Holiday's volleyball court, there's a sheet piling that's just about tipped into the water. And I called the Army Corps of Engineer for years on it, and no one's ever done anything about it. That's ready to tip in. That also slows down the process and floods Basher's Farm on Clinton Street.
Yeah, unfortunately, I mean, I'm just.
I'm not picking on
Yeah,
you.
I was gonna say, I'm an
I'm not
independent,
picking
you
on you,
know.
trust me.
Making points.
Yeah,
just-
no, definitely,
There's a lot of issues.
yeah.
And it's not unique to West Seneca or Buffalo Creek.
Yeah.
So, you know, we just have to take them on one at a time.
I understand.
Yeah, I can completely understand your frustration. I had another one of these this morning and heard, yes, on Skinny Atlas Lake when the creek's empty to that, and you are not alone. Everyone's having a lot of sediment and erosion and, you know, debris, and trying to get everyone on board with the process and implement, you know, several different alternatives is it's a monumental task, and unfortunately we just need to kind of do step by step, and eventually we'll hopefully get there.
So I'd like to say kudos to Gary. So without getting that berm, the temporary berm established permanently, this thing will never happen, right? You needed that 6 or 7 feet to get this thing to work, right?
It would still work without the berm.
Oh.
I don't remember from a modeling perspective what the decrease in the water surface elevation was before we put the berm in, but just the impact of the project would have, you know, been modified.
Yeah.
But you could have still implemented it.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I love it.
There are comment cards in the back. My email address is up on that sign. I'm very available for any questions, comments, thoughts throughout the process.
Yep, I got my business card back there too. So I'm, you know, the project manager. We have a whole team. You'll be seeing us out there as we start to do the field work in the next month or two.
Are they gonna notify us at all when it's gonna start, or?
We do plan to have another public meeting, more when we're like almost 90% done with design. So when we have a better idea after we've done all the surveying, we've done the rest of the modeling, we've kind of more firmed up what the footprint and the actual look of the floodplain would look like. We do plan to do another public meeting to re-engage you guys, make sure you guys are aware of the progress as we go along.
Some of us like to butt heads with the engineers instead of the
Okay.
managers.
Well, I'm an engineer.
There you go.
Right now.
I was gonna say, I got a bachelor's in environmental engineering and a master's in environmental, Cornell and Johns Hopkins, so I'm an engineer by
That's it?
trade. I know.
That's right.
Yeah.
Take it on.
But I'm not the one that does all the modeling. So we do have Sean Gannon, wish he could have been here. He's actually at a national floodplain conference and flying back today. But he would definitely be. He does this day in, day out. I'm just the engineer that became the manager and just kind of overseeing things.
Okay, I'll talk to Phil about something.
Okay, sounds good.
And you're gonna hang around.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, I'll definitely.
Well, we really appreciate everyone's time coming out tonight on a Friday evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Have a good night.